Hey everyone, and welcome to World Warships. As you can see, we're at a Halloween event here. We have pumpkins floating around and really bobbing in the air over here, bobbing in the water. We're looking at the New Mexico, the Tier 6 U.S. battleship, Superdreadnought. First really heavy battleship in the U.S. line. And just looking around the harbor, you see we have a skeleton ghost behind the New Mexico, and here on a really cool look, we've got the beast that is the New Mexico silhouetted against the moon. So, very nice harbor. I like it a lot, and it's some kind of a cool event. So, now looking back at the New Mexico, who is the point of this video, and this is the tier, again, this is a Tier 6 American. This has 12 14-inch guns and 4 triple turrets, and it looks a lot like a battleship. Like this is a battleship, and it looks just flat out hard, tough, angular, physical, and that's exactly what this is. And you'll see, we'll go through the armor bit piece by piece because it's very important, but you'll note that it has this little edge along the side here. That's a torpedo bulge. The secondary armament here is ineffective, really. It's the casement guns. And you have a spotter plane back here, which also is relevant to how you play this thing. Looking at the overall angles here on the lines and the turrets, thick face plates you can actually visibly see. And here's the tech tree. Go through South Carolina, Wyoming, New York, and down to New Mexico. And New Mexico, being on Tier 6, is probably the strongest Tier 6 ship. That's certainly when it's fighting in its own range. The Cleveland has a reputation for just murdering low-tier battleships, but it doesn't hold up that well against the New Mexico. The Independence is bad. The Tier 6 destroyers are annoying. You have the Japanese aircraft carriers over in their tree. Going over to Japan. The Ruyo, which is a rather effective strike carrier, but it can be shut down by American fighter carriers and not be that fun to play. You have the Oba, the Mutsuki, and the Fuso, and this is where you get into the arguments over: is the American good? Is the American bad? Does wargaming hate Americans? Are we too weeaboo, pro-Japanese? Look into the Fuso. The Fuso has, you can see it has a very different setup. It has 12 guns, but they're set up in a much more World War I style arrangement. These are their whole refits. Once they're fully outfitted refits. World War II, you see they got 20 kilometer range without the fire control upgrades, without range upgrades. This thing can basically fire across the map. You see you get at them 10% to already pretty large number, 2 kilometers in this case, off the top one. And so you're faster than New Mexico, you have as many guns, and you can shoot a lot further. So people tend to look at this, think World of Tanks, and go speed, 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 range, Fuso, Fuso, Fuso. New Mexico has to be garbage, got screwed over. But that's not the case. And we'll have to do this, we're going to have to look at how some of these numbers are assessed. Because, okay, here's the Congo. Again, same guns as the Fuso. New Mexico. If you look at the numbers between Congo and New Mexico are really pretty close. And we see we only have the 17 kilometer range here, even though we have a pretty poor World War I hull. And these things, which, again, 17.3 kilometers, 79 artillery rating, 64 survivability. And so, what do those numbers actually mean in practice? Well, New Mexico is not really range handicapped, and I know that's what people love to go on about, how wargaming has screwed the Americans by taking away their long-range gunnery, short-range mortars and everything. But here we are in hotspot. We are firing at basically maximum range against a Fuso with our plane up, and we hit him with the first shot. It hit at a poor angle, but it did hit him. Versus me, we're already down to like inside 16 kilometers here. This is not a long-range standoff. There aren't really that many long-range standoffs in the game because you have to get to objectives and you have to engage with the rest of your ships because lone ship is dead ship. He's firing at me there. I'm just not really moving to dodge any of that because you see, he can't really get a major penetration. I mean, he looks like he overpenned part of the bow there, whereas I hit him for 4 times. Dodge some bombs here, shoot at the torp planes. My AA and the other New Mexico AA are going to shred these idiots. And so I'm taking more incoming fire here. And I'm just not worried about it. And this is what is not shown in the stats, and is what's not really clear in the rest of a lot of the metrics that you could look at. And why you'll see, like, oh, the Congo and the Fuso have comparable survivability. No, they do not. The New Mexico has an extremely effective all-or-nothing armor scheme that makes it extremely difficult to citadel at any range. And it gives it very good long-range protection. You can outrange the New Mexico theoretically if you have a map and circumstances where that'll actually happen. But you're not going to really do a whole lot. That was another salvo there. It did basically nothing. But I've got a bigger problem now, and this is that a Tirpitz thinks he's playing as a cruiser, and he's coming at 3.5 kilometers here. Yeah, that's why it hurts too. I'm going up against the New Mexico. 10 out of 12 hits. Pretty much knocked his health off. And see, he's firing at me here. His secondaries don't do much. He fired one torp spread. That's going to miss behind me. Additional bounces, bounce, bounce. And he's going to torp me here. I know he's going to torp me. He fired a forward turbo salvo there. Again, not a lot I can really do about it. I have to outturn my turrets here a little bit. And I'm going to take all those torps. And I don't get to shoot him before he dies because I already damaged him so badly that he can easily finish. But I'm still standing after that. For everything the Tirpitz did, he could not get a critical hit on me. His 4 torpedoes did heavy damage, but not nearly as much as they could. And here's just another destroyer where you see, again, the advantage of having so dang many guns on this thing. And those were AP rounds, and they pretty well killed him. And I would have finished him with a secondary if not for that torpedo. So you saw, I like this little clip here because it shows the 2 aspects of the New Mexico survivability that do not come out in this 64 survivability hit point number. And that's that it has very hard armor surfaces that pretty well box out enemy fire. The turrets are extremely thick. They're as thick as the Tier 10 American turrets because those have been nerfed slightly. The turret roofs and the armored deck are both 6 inches thick, and at the ranges you fight in World of Warships, there are very few ships that, and what you fight as a Tier 6 battleship with the revised matchmaking, there are very few things that can actually penetrate that. The only one that's likely to do it is the North Carolina, and at very long range. So you're not going to take Citadel or critical hits that way. And the other aspect is that with this torpedo bulge and the anti-aircraft and the very thick belt armor and a thick bulkhead armor, that the bulkhead runs below horizontal on right below the guns here. And though that forms a nice little armored box that's 343 millimeters thick on a side, and so when you angle like this, it gets quickly up over 600. This will bounce a lot of shots outright, and it will typically stop shots from being able to penetrate your Citadel. It is extraordinarily rare to be Citadeled in one of these ships. So you don't have to worry about Citadels, and you generally will bounce a lot of shots as well. So you wind up taking a lot of 3,000 and 1,000 great hits, which can be healed. Looking at the equipment, what I did do here is I added the Gunfire Control System Mod 1 to get my range up to 17 kilometers with all my upgrades, which is perfectly serviceable. As I just stated, you're rarely going to have an exchange in this thing that's going to be effective, relevant, and over 17 kilometers. So survivability 64 with that armor scheme. Survivability 64 with the Congo. No. Sorry, Wargaming. This is that obnoxious stat again. Also the artillery stat again. 82 versus 79. Yeah, take your 64-782 ship up against this 64-79 ship in a point-blank broadside exchange. And guess who's going to walk away from that? You will be one salvoed by a New Mexico if you try to do that in a Congo, because these 14-inch guns will penetrate right through you. They will go through your 8-inch belt armor and wipe out your citadel. Well, the Congo can very well fail to penetrate the New Mexico, and almost certainly will fail to hit the citadel. So you'll see the New Mexico, when you're driving it, you're going to want to turn it towards the enemy if you can, like this. Because this drives up the side turret armor, the side belt armor, and the front bulkhead armor to really, really high levels, and you can just completely forget about the turret. Going back through the tech tree here, on your way to this thing, you have the New York. Again, the New York has A hole, B hole, then New Mexico. You need to get the B hole in the New York right away. And then the same thing with the New Mexico. You're going to want to go down and get the B hole and even the C hole before you address the speed and the maximum gun range, because the B hole and the C hole have major armor refits with the torpedo bulge and with the guns in particular. There's a war game it doesn't show you, but you have a shell. But you have a shell difference that is very important. You go back to the Texas stock, the New York stock shells on the New Mexico before you can go back to the World War II ones. Now we're back to the Fuso and looking at Fuso, and you see an issue with the Fuso. One, the Fuso is not as well armored. It has 11 inches of armor rather than the over 13 on the New Mexico. And it also has most of its turrets facing back, so it can't quite fire 6 and then 12 forward turrets at the same angles the New Mexico can. So that means that it has to over-angle. It cannot hold fighting bow on is not very effective with it. You need to turn, and you need to keep turning, and you need to keep turning, and keep turning, and keep turning. And the problem here is that when you turn this much to expose your side, you're not as effectively angled, and your front bulkhead isn't very thick anyway. It's more like 8 inches rather than the New Mexico's armored 13-inch box. So you have to turn much, much further to engage something that's in front of you with all your guns. And you can't really fight effectively with your forward batteries alone like the New Mexico can. And so the New Mexico is massively harder than the Fuso. It's not even close. It also has better anti-aircraft and better torpedo defense. So, and it has, due to not having the obnoxious midship turrets, it does not have magazines all over the place either. It has 2 sets of magazines and a relatively short citadel for the type of ship this is. So people will rag on the American battleships because they aren't quite as sexy in numbers and speed and whatever as the Japanese, but that just isn't really right. And there are things to be mad at wargaming over about Japanese bias and weebooism and all sorts of stuff, but this is not one of them. The American Standard Class battleship is an excellent ship, and it actually is one of the impetuses for what, looking at the anti-aircraft here, you see it doesn't have super anti-aircraft, but it does start to have the 40mm Bofors. And this is what it's like having no anti-aircraft when you start out with it. That's not anti-aircraft. Those guns don't even hit anything. So what I was starting to say is that the New Mexico and the rest of the standards were recognized by the Japanese as very difficult ships to deal with because they're so heavily armored, and while they are relatively slower, the whole American doctrine, Mahanian doctrine, was that we're going to push to your objective, and if you run away from us, that's fine. We'll take your objective anyway, and you lose. So you have to engage us, and we're going to move a little bit slower and more uniformly, and we're going to win that engagement because that's what we do. As you can see, this is the intermediate upgrade here. What the Americans did. This is the Pearl Harbor configuration of the New Mexico, where they did a massive interwar refit, upgraded the guns significantly, and that's what you want to do in the game. You want to get that upgrade as soon as you can for actual effective armor-piercing ammunition, because crappy World War I rounds are crappy World War I rounds. New Mexico never really used those for any length of time. And World War II Pacific Blue setup here. So the Japanese looked at ships like this, and they realized that the Americans had a dozen standard battleships of improving quality and just minor evolutionary upgrades, all about the same speed, all pretty heavily armed. And the Japanese don't really have that many battleships. 4 of their battleships are Congos, which as stated, are not going to live a whole heck of a lot. So they realized that, particularly after the Naval Treaty Limits capped development, when the Americans were planning on building 12 additional battleships and battlecruisers, all 16-inch guns, and of the same general layout as the New Mexico here with the Tennessee and the Glass, and also that you started having all these 8x16, 12x16 ships. The Japanese realized they needed to even up those odds because they were never going to be able to outbuild the United States. So they came up with the super battleship class in the 1930s, which wound up becoming Yamato. So Yamato was essentially meant to equalize the numerical and qualitative disadvantage the Japanese faced against these things. In research, you have 72,000 to go to Colorado, which is notoriously bad as stock, and it absolutely deserves its reputation as stock. I have no intention of playing a stock Colorado here. I'm saving up free experience to just skip to the Sea Hull and the upgraded engines. And then you have 120,000 to the first American fast battleship, North Carolina, which is also the heaviest thing you are going to see in the New Mexico now, which is relevant because the North Carolina is a fast battleship. It's not actually as well armored as New Mexico in a lot of places. So can New Mexico hurt itself? Yes. Can it hurt North Carolina? Oh, heck yeah, it can. So it's not really at that big a disadvantage against North Carolina in most engagement ranges. You just don't want to get into a long-range bomb contest because North Carolina has 2,700-pound super heavy shells, which will easily penetrate your hull. So this is a Halloween game here, where we are playing the Phantom Fortress mode, and which means that we are starting off down 10 ships to 15. And I skipped the start of this replay because it was a choppy mess with how the replay wound up encoding through the ship, and the replay client again is enabled through a bit of a directory edit. It's not entirely user friendly, and it's not thoroughly debugged. So that just didn't add a whole heck of a lot to replay, and I skipped it. But our problem here is that we are down 10 ships to 15. We have the carrier rather than the Salem Witch, the Des Moines, which is a absolute murder boat. We have the carrier. The carrier's not as powerful, but it's not bad. But we are down 10 ships to 5, so we have to stick together here and make some magic happen. And our plan is basically to control one way and then come back and engage everything as much of a group as we possibly can. Now this is frustrating here. That first shot, I don't know what the heck my aim assist was thinking. It was locked onto that ship, but those fell like 2 kilometers short. That's just a bug, and it's a very obnoxious bug. I've seen it before, usually with other ships, but that was just one ship. There was no reason for that. Debug, please. Okay, thanks. So I am very much interested in not being lone ship, dead ship here with us already outnumbered 3-2. I'm just moving over with other battleships and crappy German mid-tier cruiser. Open up, broadside, 15 kilometers. Hits. Overpenetrated, but I hit them. And so the accuracy on this thing, the effective combat range, these are not bad. I don't know what people are talking about when you talk about, other than paper theory crafting, that the Japanese have better accuracy, better range. They do, but it doesn't usually matter. And especially if you're trying to get into a long-range exchange with these ships, because I'm going to take some speculative shots at the other New Mexico here, but I'm not really expecting those to do anything. Possible golden BB if they get over the hill. But shooting long-range at New Mexico is not useful with armor-piercing ammunition. You load high explosive if you are going to seriously be engaging in a long-range exchange with the New Mexico, because you just can't penetrate the horizontal armor. The only ships that are likely to do it are not ones that New Mexico actually has to fight. So destroyer here, being a bad destroyer, didn't live long for being a bad destroyer. 2 ships down on their side. It's a well-regarded ship by people that have played the game, but on in general talk, it's a little bit underrated, and its main disadvantage is that it can't quite tactically flex to get to relevant positions as quickly as the Japanese ships can. So it will take some losses that are related to positioning if it gets too far away from where the action winds up being. We're going to see that here in a little bit because the enemy team does something very clever here and has basically gotten weak wing, strong wing on us, and we don't know that yet. In the meantime, though, we're going to engage these guys and finish them off because we're at a numerical disadvantage. Yeah, Carswell is a garbage ship. That was the other New Mexico there, and he fired at me. That was a pretty good salvo he hit me with, but again, no Citadel damage. And you can heal 50% of the armor penetrations and 100% of the overpens. So we look at how much I was able to heal back there. Those shots did basically nothing in terms of serious damage. And yeah, you don't have to be afraid of a lot of long-range fire in this ship. And you also have the fact that your general armor scheme is reliable enough that if you have to go broadside to get rid of something promptly, like this New Mexico, you don't have to be afraid of doing that. Like, you're not going to generally be surprised, oh my god, Citadel. Just like I'm not even trying to Citadel this thing. I'm just gonna put shells on target behind the smoke screen here. And not having to fear long-range plunging fire, and being able to position bow on towards long-range fire, and not have to worry about any penetrations against your vertical armor, horizontal shots, is nice. As is that you, like with the Turpits in the opening video, I knew he wasn't going to Citadel me. It was really, really unlikely that he would manage to Citadel me effectively. And those, again, were not Citadel shots, but you don't really need to get Citadel penetration with New Mexico because you have 12 guns. And so 12 times 3,000-ish, yeah, that's most of the health of anything. So you generally are not going to win a trading salvo contest with the New Mexico. It is the most well-positioned guns in the game, along with the Montana. And it's functionally a little Montana at tier 6, which is nice because tier 6 is about one of the highest tiers you ever want to play in this game, which is a subject for the review that I'm putting together. As you saw there, I had a couple shots that had to come and lob it on the enemy New Mexico, and they totally failed to penetrate him. That ship is dead. He has torpedoes. I'm just going to make sure that I have my depth perception right on that it is actually finished. Yeah, okay, he's dead. So I don't need to fire here. So we'll switch back and get rid of this New Mexico. And now you see what's happened. We've wiped out this flank quite nicely. We've got our numbers rolling up, and we're going to pump more shots into this New Mexico here. As many hits as that was, 8 hits, it only did 6,000 damage. And he's going to fire another 4 at me. I have 50,000 health. I now have 41,000 health. So 4 shots did 9k damage. Again, no Citadels on either of us. He fired some shots as he was getting blown up. Minimal. Another couple thousand. Yeah, New Mexico survivability there. I'm going to like it when I get 4 heals up on this thing, because I'm going to use all my heals in this game to heal all the 30% damage and the overpens because you get almost all of those and very few Citadels on this ship, so you will use your heals, and you'll even win Dreadnought medals fairly easily on this ship because of that. The enemy has decided they're going to blitz with the remaining ships. We have 6 ships coming up here towards our cap on one side, and they're trying to fast cap us because they realize this is not going well. Like you've been equalized, and now you're outgunned because we have the boss ship, we have the boss aircraft carrier, we have New Mexico's are still here. One of New Mexico's is sunk. This is not a good place to be as the enemy team. So here we have an aircraft flying past me to go after the carriers, and New Mexico's not a very good flight path to go over. I think I get a couple of them here with my anti-aircraft, which is, yeah, I got some of the escorting fighters there, and I think I clipped a bomber too. Actually, 2 fighters. Looking at the map again in terms of what flew over me. And that's the New Mexico anti-aircraft. It's not murder anti-aircraft most of the time, but it does do something that's very, very nice, and it does enough damage to stop enemy planes from circling you, and waiting for an ideal shot with your rudder fully committed. You do that with New Mexico, you're going to lose most of your aircraft, and your strike's not going to be very effective. It's not going to be as bad as trying to do it to a Colorado or North Carolina where you won't have any planes left, but it's enough to deter people from doing it and to actually make them think about what they're attempting. And as in that first clip I showed you, it's an effective flak vehicle with other ships. So now we are in trouble here. We have 3-4 enemy ships on cap, and I'm trying to figure out who is the best cap target to get rid of here. Taking shots at the Furitaka there to see if maybe those can connect. That looks pretty good, but yeah, I wind up straddling him. And this happens here where I get some RNG, just obnoxious stuff that that I would have had considerably more damage and would have been not quite so close in this game had I not had bad RNG exactly when I did, but that's what RNG is. It's going to disperse your shots so far. The good news is with New Mexico, you have 12 tubes. So if you're firing everything you've got at people, 6 shots, 12 shots, staggered, you don't need to really, you can count that you're generally going to get a salvo, a hit out of a salvo here. Frequently multiple hits. Again, 12 guns is really, really nice, and you only see this highly usable 12 gun setup on New Mexico and on the Montana. This is a particularly obnoxious moment here. I fired 12 shots with correct lead, really, and he's turning. And yeah, they all splash slightly behind and on both sides of him. That would have been nice to have. And you see, I'm pretty much thinking this is over here. We've not managed. We have a lot of our ships are kind of behind an island here. They're not in good accuracy range. Now someone hit the New Mexico like I was trying to do and bought us some time. So now let's see what else we can pull off. I'm going for Mr. Cleveland here, who is, you're going to find out, well, like I said before, I think this is the best tier 6 ship, Cleveland notwithstanding. And the thing is, again, Cleveland is good at trolling low tier ships. And it's overpowered at what it does and should be higher tiered for purposes of being a cruiser, because it is bad news to face. But if you get into a major furball like this with battleships, the Cleveland is a tin can. And this is a particular problem with the New Mexico, because while the Cleveland has citadels that are difficult to hit, you, as New Mexico, are firing 12 of these at a crack. And I just tore that out of New Mexico without, again, he did not get citadel penetrated. None of those penetrated the citadel, none of those knocked out a turret. But they did a lot of overall damage. And we're sizing up now everybody we're going to have to take out. We've got a miraculous second wind here. We almost lost. But now they're in trouble. They realize that they're outnumbered, outgunned. Our ships are coming back. I'm going to go say hi to New York here. There have been better days to be than New York. That salvo was not very effective, but again, RNG, the New Mexico shots should be able to penetrate most aspects of the New York at 10 kilometers. They got 3 overpins. And so here comes Mr. Cleveland. Mr. Cleveland. Nice health you have. Thank you for turning that way, by the way. Splat.
Enemy cruiser foundered.
Yeah, do not do that as a cruiser against New Mexico. Goodbye, you're dead. And Mr. Cleveland has been removed from the game. And now we're going to go take on this New York. And I've got 44,000 hit points here. I don't really care if he hurts me. I want to just knock him down. So I'm going to go broadside here because I can win a DPS exchange with New York easily, and he cannot citadel me. So I'm going to fire a little bit ahead of there, but wound up doing 16,000 damage. Pretty well tore his bow off. This thing, this Karlsruhe over here, this crappy ship, who finally got hit, he had most of their cap points. You see me calling it out there, but... this New York wound up being too distracted to actually do jack all to me. He wound up turning away. I would have gotten the kill there except for the torps, but... knocked him flat, taking shots at these obnoxious planes that are coming in here. Don't really worry about this. We're winning, and I can deal with a torpedo strike or two, and I don't care about bombs at all on this thing, so... I'm just going to try to get rid of this last Karlsruhe here, because there's damage to be had and kills. And again, 12 shots. Nice turning cruiser, but 12 shots. And so 3 hits, no matter how... Again, the benefits of 12 on target, easily on target, don't have to worry about being harmed too much in positioning guns. I'm waiting for our reload, and we're going to try to finish this job off here. Again, 12 shots. Turn all you want. You're not getting away. And I have a Confederate, which is for damaging 6 ships over 20% of their health each. And, yeah, best medal you can get, other than maybe Solo Warrior, which I've not managed to get yet, and most people don't get in this game, because it's not like World of Tanks. So, we won the Phantom Fortress game at this point. We just have the aircraft carriers to mop up. I'm detected. And we're going to wind up having a carrier hiding in the corner here. So where does this stack up overall in terms of ships that you get? Definitely when you're grinding through the American line, this is a keeper. This is an easy keeper. It's certainly more powerful at its tier than either the tier 9 or the tier 10 American battleships are. It doesn't have to deal with the Yamato or Yamato equivalent. It is good for rank battles, which I'm going to do next season. I had some real life stuff going on, so I was not able to participate early in ranked battles, and so I'd be getting horrible queue times, so not bothering with that yet. We have silly planes here that are going to try to do a kind of an odd drop there. I think it's going. I was trying to get someone behind me there, but we got one of them were passing me. And so this is definitely a keeper, full equipment on it, as stated. The range upgrade, the rudder upgrade is really nice to get as well, and I have that on this. But you're pretty much never going to regret having this thing, and you're not going to regret ever playing it, because even if you don't win, you're generally not going to get wrecked. Like, you will be able to engage and fight and have fun with your big battleship. And it's a very nice big battleship, so that really is all there's to say about it in the World of Warships category. If you don't like this ship, you're not using your forward lobes. This is not a bad ship. It's not screwed by wargaming. It's none of those things. It does exactly what it's supposed to do and how it was designed. So read up on Mahanian Doctrine and stop effing complaining about how you can't shoot across the map with a bunch of irrelevant low DPS shots. Because you'd much rather be able to just erase people in moderate to close range and not worry about taking serious damage. That is what the standard battleship is for. So this last little cowardly carrier here escapes. And win. That's just flat out nice. And relative score. And 111,000 damage done. I earned that Confederate. There we go.